Good evening. The time is now 5:00 p.m. on October 17th of 2022, and it is time to call the public safety meeting to order. Chief Carrera, please note attendance for the record. Thank you all for attending today. Committee members, having reviewed the agenda, are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a problem. It said that you closed the meeting
Mhm.
last time. I feel like we all closed the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be sure to note your comments and concerns. I have actually one item to add to the discussion. That is the current wildfire risk to the community. We've seen a lot of chatter back and forth, and I know that there's a number of residents who are concerned. So I've asked Chief Carrera to speak to that this evening. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to add this item under discussion?
So move.
Second?
I will second it.
I did beat you on that one, but
Okay.
at this time, we would typically welcome comments from the public. At this point in the evening, there are no members of the public here in City Hall, and I have seen check one more time. Nope, there are no members of the public online. So that being said, we will go ahead and move forward. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. These are from October 3rd of 2022. Committee members, are there any questions or concerns on the minutes
So moved.
other than the one that you
Yeah.
raised previously?
I think I made it clear.
Okay. All right. I'll second that one as well then. Next up, there are two agenda bills. The first is Agenda Bill 22-149. This is a quarterly fire accreditation report. And here we have Deputy Chief Bailey.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Oh, thank you.
Good. So this is the third issue of what we've put out for our quarterly plan. You have it in your packets. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there were a couple of things that I kind of wanted to point out that I thought were interesting that you might want to see from the report. One was just on the work plan. I just wanted to point out that there were some things on there. The PCERN project, which is our digital radio system and upgrade that we're getting, that has been delayed again until 2023, but we're hoping to maybe get our radios a little sooner because our radios are getting to the point where they can't be repaired. So we're hoping to get those moved up on the list. Also on our work plan, just to point out that we were working a little bit towards the part-time paid staffing as that was put in as a decision package for the budget for the next 2 years. I don't believe it was one of the ones that was approved, but it is still something that we're going on and working towards. The next thing I wanted to point out had to do with the incidences per month and per year, just to show you about where we are. We had talked previously when we first put the report out about how we are kind of lower because of COVID and things like that. And you can see on the graph there that we've had our highest, pretty much almost our highest 3 months ever have been the last couple months. And for the end of the quarter, which was the end of September, we had 1,174 calls, and we still have 3 months to go. And you can see based on from 2019 forward, kind of where we are, we've almost had more calls than we did in 2019. So just kind of pointing out that we are getting a lot busier. That can just be attributed to the population of the area. Plus, I think we had talked before about how we're running on more calls with Eastside because they did change their run cards to where it's the closest unit as opposed to more territorial. The other thing I thought was interesting too, we are talking a little bit later about wildfires, but when you look at our annual incidents per type, for the first 2 quarters, we had a total of 9. And I know it doesn't show the numbers, it just shows the pie chart on there. But for the first 2 quarters of the year, we had 9 fire instances, which could be structure fire, vehicle fire, brush fire. After the 3rd quarter, it went up to 33. So in just the 3 months, it jumped up from 9 to 33. And that had to do with an increase in brush fires over the summer. We had 10 brush fires over the quarter, and then a couple of smaller ones that you would expect to see, like vehicle fires and things like that. But I just thought that was kind of interesting to point out that our fire call really jumps up in the summertime when we start adding in those brush fires, either if it's in the city or outside in Eastside or Falls Cities area. The mutual aid stayed pretty much about the same as it has the last couple quarters, right about what we're putting out still stays right there around. I think the previous ones were 35.4 and we're at 35.1 now. It's a little hard to see there. And then the aid received went up just a little bit too, just because we had some bigger incidences in the city. Also, sometimes where we were out on multiple calls. If we're out on a call, then somebody else has to back us up. So that's where that little jump came from. And then the last quarter, we had 0 fire loss. This last quarter, in the third quarter, we did have a couple fires here in the city. The first one there on the 10th was from a car fire just down the street here, where it was a total loss of the vehicle. That's where you see the $10,000 in the property. It was $10,000 for the car and $3,000 for the contents. The other ones you can see, we had some big property values, but really small loss, and that just had to do with the one on the 826 was up at the golf course, and they had a small bark fire on the outside of the building that burned up and burned some siding. So that's why we had, around $1,000 of fire loss. But you can see that the property itself is 16. So that shows a really good percentage because the property was 16. And then the other one we had was right at the beginning of September, again, a large building that was at Cascade View Elementary. They had I believe it was a refrigerator that malfunctions overnight and smoked up destroyed the refrigerator, smoked up the room. Not too much damage, but that's where we had, again, they valued the building at $28 million, but it was only $4,000 or $20,000 in property and content loss. So it still was a pretty small loss because it was controlled by the sprinkler system. They were called initially because of a fire alarm, and then got there and then found the smoke inside the one room. It was contained in the one room. So those are the ones that I just kind of wanted to point out, some of the changes that we had over the last quarter. Was there any questions? Yes, council members.
So in terms of content value, what exactly is the value in that one then? Because I see that it's a little bit different than the content loss and the other things. How's that calculated?
So what you look at is the property value, and a lot of it is based off of, we get it off the King County's parcel viewer.
Okay.
So that's where you get the property value. And then you look at, it's just an estimate. Sometimes it's what we get from the fire investigator, what the property loss is. That comes from the fire investigator. If it's not from the fire investigator, we have a percentage that we take out of the overall loss. The content value is, again, we view it as I believe it's a 25%. It's 25% of the property value we determine is the content value. And then the content loss would be what is lost in the building. So the furnishings of the building.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Watton.
I'm always fascinated about mutual aid, especially as I watch your vehicles go by my office, and it's like, okay, I think I keep track of those for you. So
Get a tally mark.
yeah, exactly. And I think I've seen the aid car go by 5 times and the engine go by once in the last 2 weeks. But I guess my point is this, is it would be kind of interesting to know when you are out of service, either transporting somebody over to Overlake or Swedish, and that ends up in mutual aid to us. And the same thing is when I see you're over in North Bend, and then I see Falls City coming to North Bend, as there's been a lot of activity, it seems all centered around North Bend, is kind of how much of an impact that makes on the services for the city. And I always think, okay, the aid car is out, there's nobody to take care of the engine if there's a fire. So I guess I'm just curious on.
Yeah, I mean, North Bend, probably, North Bend, East Side area probably is the highest call volume in the area. So there's probably, as we've shown, there's more times that we cover them, Falls City covers them, than they come into us. But for example, I believe it was just over the weekend, we were on a smoke investigation at a house. I believe it was wire sparking. And there was 3 other calls that happened in the area at the time where they had to drop. 2 were in the city. 1 was outside the city. There's a cardiac arrest, and there was not in the city. The cardiac arrest wasn't in the city, but there were some other calls, an AFA downtown, automatic fire alarm, and an aid call up on the ridge where we had to wait for either Falls City or Renegotiated. But the good thing is, you have those 3 units. You have a unit in North Bend, us, and then you also have Falls City. But the way that it's kind of set up too is if all those units are out, east side will bring up other units up into the area. So if they see, the battalion chief sees that, okay, Snoqualmie and east side, North Bend are out on a call, they're probably going to be there for a while. They'll send up another unit, will start coming up this way from Issaquah to start handling those subsequent calls. So even though we do, provide, more mutual aid out to, North Bend, they are still helping to backfill the area with some of their other units, just in case another call comes in that 3-city area.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Thank you.
I just want to say that is a really good question, because a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Duplicative incidents is an indicator of when more resources are needed. Right. So, and it never fails. If we get an incident, probably within 5 minutes, there's going to be another one that's coming in within the city. It happened over the weekend 3 or 4 times. The crews were running all day Sunday, and there was crews going up and heading out and doing other things. But that is another indicator, and we do measure that when we can. The new N4 system that we're going to will allow us to do that much easier.
Okay.
But that is an indicator because it shows saturation of resources, and then they are not available to handle those incidents.
And realizing that the majority of calls are going to be EMS calls, not necessarily something that's,
Statistically,
fire.
right.
Yeah.
Statistically, 80% of them are EMS. If you're going to bet on which incident's coming in next, it would be EMS. Yeah.
And so staffing could be different. Not having a full firefighter and EMS.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of different choices you could look at. If you're looking at trying to pull some of that burden, if it's because we're out transporting to the point you were talking about earlier, then you
Yeah.
could look at other resources to actually do that transport.
Yeah.
That's what Eastside was doing for a while. They had a dedicated transport resource up here that would keep them in service. Now that they're cross-staffed, they're out of the area a little bit more. That causes us to run more incidents up into their area.
Mm-hmm.
And they cover a large area. To Mike's point, they,
Yeah.
it's all the way up to what, 42 or 44 on the freeway.
Yeah.
That whole wilderness area up there, as well as all of North Bend.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
good question.
I have a question.
Maris.
Hello. So you mentioned, did you say East Side Fire changed the way of mutual aid, or did the group, all of us, change the way of mutual aid?
East Side Fire was the most recent one that did it. Snoqualmie did it a couple years ago, I believe, with the closest unit.
The mutual aid agreement has not changed. What happened was that the agencies deployed their resources differently, and that caused an impact to how we're doing our mutual aid. So as an example, there used to be delays in response plans to where there'd be units driving through Snoqualmie to get to calls on the other side, putting our residents at risk. So we talked with them about, hey, maybe we should actually look at having us do those incidents so that we're the ones responding through the community to get to those incidents. And we've made some adjustments to that. And to what Mike was just getting at, Eastside recently had a response plan in place where they had their engine dedicated, and then part of the time they had a dedicated transport unit up at the casino. I believe that's now only in service part of the time, if
I don't think they're using it
at all. So that's so to Councilmember Wan's point, that's when we monitor these things. And if it starts having an adverse impact, that's when we go meet with them and have that dialogue. That answer your question?
It does. I'm just wondering if they're short-staffed then at North Bend, for instance.
Just
If
other
we're
than,
doing
I don't know, I
an
wouldn't say
excessive-
necessarily that they're
excessive
short
number.
staffed, but they changed their response, as in, like Chief said, they used to have 4 people at the station, and they had another 2 that were staffing an aid car at the casino.
Right.
And they've dropped that aid car at the casino, and a couple other places they had dedicated aid cars like that they said they temporarily dropped because they were trying to bring in more firefighters because they had to hire a bunch due to retirements. And I believe I think those firefighters are just starting to come out. Firefighters, EMTs are just starting to come out on the street. And so we might, I think what I heard was their commitment was to bring those back once they got more, boots back on the street, but they're still trying to build their personnel. I don't want to speak for their level, but they're trying to build their personnel levels back up. And they told us that once they did, that they were probably going to restart that aid car, but I haven't heard anything concrete that they're going to yet, timing wise.
Maybe we can reach out to them and ask them.
That's what I was
Great.
going to say.
I can.
Yeah, we'll give
Thanks.
this answer.
Thanks.
That'd be helpful. Oh, before you go too far though, I did have a question then, in terms of where we are, I guess, right now. So looking at basically the breakdown, you'd indicated previously that we were looking at pulling people in part-time to the firefighter program. Is that just on hold then? where exactly is that being left off in terms of the budget going forward?
I believe it was included in the budget as one of the decision packages. From what I understand, it wasn't included, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to still continue to look at it and see if there's ways to do it or ways to bring it back, or if there are some ways to shift some things around as we go through the budget next year. It is still a priority for us to look at. So we might come back at some other options as how we might fund it or how we might solve that. But it's not completely being shelved. It just wasn't included as, one of the things that started out in the budget.
Okay, and just so that I understand then, would the part-time people being brought on, would we then be needing to appropriate additional funds for that? Or would they be replacing some of the firefighters if they leave?
They wouldn't be replacing any firefighters. They would be additional as using some of our staff that we currently have. We'd be asking more requirement wise of them. They'd have to be there at the station more often. So that might increase what goes out in regards to their reimbursement. And that would be something that we'd have to come back if we find that is something we're going to pursue. That might be something that would come back to the Public Safety Committee to say, hey, this is something that we're doing. Here's 3 different options as how we might be able to fund it and be able to bring that back and bring that forward. So it's something that, like I said, it's not completely shelved, but it's something we still want to look at. It's still one of our goals for the next year that we might be able to use to help strengthen up some of our response areas.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Any further questions?
I've run out of questions.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. It was helpful, as well as the additional answers that we received. The next item is agenda bill. It's AB 22-076. This is the 2023-2024 biennial budget. Mr. Boutte?
Should have brought my binder in.
Right, so thank you, council members, for having me here again at your Public Safety Committee meeting. In essence, what we've done is we've incorporated the ordinance as a part of this agenda bill. This is basically the second time that we're going around to all the committees just to see if you have any questions. As you received at your last committee meeting, both the fire department and the police department provided council with presentations. And we're here and happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the biennial budget, specifically in regard to these 2 departments. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
All right. Council members, do you have questions that you'd like to ask Mr. Boutte at this point?
I
Councilmember
do.
Watton.
Where are we at on take-home vehicles?
Well, I think at this moment, I'd probably like to pull Captain Brian up here because he has some information to share with you.
Okay, thank you. That was almost a setup.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
So I'm covering for Chief Phipps. He's out of town. He's attending the International Association of Police Chiefs Conference down in Dallas this week. So
You're already doing way better.
well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I can give you an update on what we've been doing in the last 7 to 8 days. Last Tuesday, I attended the public safety meeting over for the city of North Bend. During that meeting, Officer Smith did a presentation, same presentation that he gave to you guys on the take-home cars. The numbers that we had worked leading up to that the week prior with Drew to get a little bit more of a dialed in number for them. Prior to that meeting, I met with 2 city council members to have coffee with them and to just kind of gauge their support on this. Overwhelmingly, I'm hearing good things. They think it's a great idea. They know that it's needed. It's just going to be an uphill battle to try to find the money. So after that meeting, directly following that public safety meeting, they had their first budget workshop. And they were left asking questions about what their actual number was for the entire budget. They didn't have that ready for them. So they made the decision to have us fill out decision card forms, specifically asking for what we want and for what the other department heads in that city wanted. So I've worked with Drew over the last few days to get that completed, and I actually handed it in at 4 o'clock this afternoon to their finance department. the way that we did it for the take-home cars, knowing that an upfront, you got to buy all these cars all at once was not going to fly. We broke it down into buying one car the first year, one car the second year, and then 2 and 2. So to have the cars purchased within 4 years. There is a little bit of contention when I brought that up today about the having it be 6 cars instead of 4 cars that were needed. North Bend's of the belief that they are on the hook for 8 cars instead of 10. That would cover the 8 patrol officers and the 2 sergeants that they pay for, which makes a total of 10 cars. So I think there's maybe a little bit of communication and education that needs to happen with North Bend Finance. In speaking to Richard over at their head of finance, it was his idea was to go to what I provided them today, go to the mayor tomorrow and put a request out to work with Mayor Ross and city administrator and finance here and have the 6 people in the room to kind of hammer out any questions moving forward. I've tried to do the best I can. I'm not a money guy. And I try to bring things that he tells me. And, you know, sometimes I think I do worse than as if I didn't ask those questions, but I did my best. And I think it's time now that the money people need to be in the same room for a minute and figure out if it's even something doable for this year. The officers and myself were well aware it's an uphill battle because we're up against timelines now with the budget for this year. There was talk, though, one of the city council members over there during their budget workshop, who I thought was going to express the most hate and discontent for this idea, actually said that he would support it if they could find the money, and that it would possibly be time to open up the negotiations to extend the contract early instead of waiting until the end of the life of the contract. So when talking to Richard, when I told him that today, he was not of the same mindset, but some of the council members were. So that's basically where the information that I have that I have witnessed and I have heard, and I've been talking to the council members there. That's all that I have right now to let you know. After every meeting, I left thinking, okay, we're not dead. This is still alive. And then something would happen and I'm like, oh no, they're never going to go for that. But each time, I'm hearing positive things about it, and that they know long-term what we're asking for is needed for the health of the department, for the, you know, to make this a department where people want to come work instead of, you know, going to the police academy and working 2 or 3 years and realizing that they can go somewhere else for those benefits. I don't want to see the department turn into that. So that's the way that I've been discussing it with these council members over in North Bend, and they seem on board with it. They know the value of it.
That's great
encouraging.
feedback. Councilmember Benson.
Is it necessary that Snoqualmie remain in a holding pattern on this until North Bend figures out what they're going to do? Or is it something that we can't go forward with unless they're simultaneously moving forward?
So what I've heard was that both cities like to have the same exact thing moving forward, because it's for the police department to function properly. We kind of need to be a whole unit and not half and half. I think that that's something that we need to think about if they are unable to commit to what I just presented to them today with those numbers. We're already phasing this in and saying you don't need to buy all these cars right at once. We know, and our officers know, that those cars that we have, and as we buy them, will go by seniority. There's going to be officers that don't have those take-home cars for the first couple of years, maybe even 3 years. I'm not sure the logistics of saying that Snoqualmie will get this program going and only half of the officers that are designated as Snoqualmie officers will have cars or have options to have cars within the first couple of years. I think it would probably be long-term for the morale and the health of the department, it's probably not a sustainable plan. That's why we were trying to, it's hard to juggle two different cities and two different city councils and two different public safety meetings, and which the timing of it is difficult. So trying to get them on board at the right time. I have heard that they don't like being the last ones to know, and they feel like they are being disrespected, by the police department when that happens. So I've tried to, make face-to-face contact with some of these council members that have said that. And I've let them know that it's my intention to get rid of those feelings. I want them to feel like partners and not just a contract city. So I think, I've only been here 3 months, and there's a lot of baggage between two cities, with different administrations going past, and I'm hearing stories from different people about that. But I'm one man. What can I do? I can help the communication flow, Yes, sir.
So I wonder if we've talked about, I don't know if Snoqualmie is more flush than North Bend right now, or if there's anything like that, but maybe there's a way to look at the department as a whole and the percentages that we're talking about Snoqualmie paying and North Bend paying, but then phasing it in through seniority across the department.
Mhm.
And if Snoqualmie is in more of a position to get it started and North Bend can prepare to jump in, maybe there's some way that we could work that out between the two cities. Is that something that we've looked at?
I'm going to go ahead and direct that over to the administration for how they'd like to respond. I haven't, at least it's my personal understanding that, well, we're already putting a fair bit under the existing contract for North Bend, but I'll let the administration address that if you'd like.
The straightest answer that I can give you is we are following the contract that is currently in place. And according to the contract that is currently in place, our folks in finance put together the plan for how we could do take-home vehicles throughout the department, meaning both cities. So, could the contract be renegotiated? As the chief said, North Bend is already making noises about, gee, maybe we need to extend the existing agreement. But, obviously this was before my time. There was a lot of blood and sweat that went into creating the current contract. So, the most straight answer I can give you is we're following the agreement that is in place.
Yeah, if they want to open that contract, I don't foresee it being a quick thing. So.
And everyone needs to pay their fair share.
Yes.
I wasn't suggesting that everybody doesn't pay their fair share. I'm just wondering if there's ways that, because bottom line is we can talk about a police vehicle take-home program till we're blue in the face. If we don't start putting wheels on the ground, then it's not much of a program. So no, I absolutely think everybody has to pay their fair share, but if there's some way that we can get it rolling in some way that's equitable and doable for both cities, we've got to do it. I'm not trying to throw anybody's work under the bus at all. I just, if there's a way that we can get it going, let's get it going, because I know that there's a whole lot of cities out there that need cops, and I don't want them to start poaching ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the concern.
Councilmember Watton, did you have?
Yeah, it just point of context too. It was not that many years ago when Chief Mark Toner was the only police officer from the contract with King County covering the city of North Bend. And of course, the city of North Bend was maybe 4,000 residents versus 7,000 today. The second point to that is that City of North Bend has also been one of 3 communities, I believe, in King County that have taken advantage of the 0.10% sales tax for public safety. We have not exercised that. And they do have those funds available for this initiative that they could tap into. And thirdly is going from one officer and maybe a couple sheriff's officers in the area. Now they've got coverage of 6 to 8 officers. So there's a huge benefit for them. And we've seen, crime overall. We saw the statistics last month that the chief provided, whether it's property crime or vehicle thefts, affecting both cities differently, but both cities needing more protection. And I'm hearing that from my neighbors in Snoqualmie. So, it sounds to me like you're making very good headway. Don't give up. But encourage the administration to continue working with them and reiterating the points why this is a beneficial thing. And it's why people move here, is because it's a safe community. And the way you do that is make sure that you've got officers on the street. So
And that they
keep
have the
it up.
tools they need.
I agree.
And to the council member's point, taking it back up to the 10,000-foot view. Yes, we're talking about take-home vehicles, but what we're really talking about is recruitment and retention of quality officers. And every city in Pierce, Snohomish, and King County right now is attempting to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And that's really what this is it's an attempt to recognize the quality of the officers we have, the officers we've been able to recruit, and attempt to retain them.
Absolutely.
And to Mayor Ross, I did speak to Mayor McFarland about this and with the chief. And after me giving the presentation and the chief given his presentation, his thoughts were that he would not stand in the way of having this move forward, that he wanted to be neutral without an opinion to the council. But he would allow us to move the request forward without him, being in the way at all.
Right. And we've had conversations with their city administrator and mayor on numerous occasions regarding take-home cars. But I think the approach of 1 car a year is a lot easier than, $600,000 outlay for multiple cars.
Yeah,
So,
I don't have the numbers memorized, but the ones that I just handed in were for 1 car, and 2 and 2.
right.
And that seemed to be a lot more doable when in my conversations with the council members and at the budget meeting, they were a lot more apt to go with that than forking over all that money all up front. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are there any further questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
One more.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 4 new cars over the course of 4 years? 3 years.
4 years.
So they,
6, wouldn't it be 6 cars?
yeah,
One,
it's,
one, two, two.
it's my understanding that they have purchased 4 cars and that they pay for 8 patrol officers, which means they owe 4 more cars to get this program going. They also pay for 2 sergeants. And that money is in there to cover, that's why we have 6 cars. They already have 4 more patrol and 2 sergeants. So it's a total of 10.
So are you able to retain some of your existing rolling stock so that you can move forward a little more quickly, even though
Yeah, and
they rattle a little more?
this is the difficulty in having me ask Drew, give me the numbers. How much is this going to be? It's a moving target because some of the cars that have already been purchased are on the 5-year life cycle. And I cannot sell this council or the other council that those cars are going to be on the 7-year life cycle that we're expecting will happen because they've already started. The clock's already started on them. Once we start this program, we get brand new cars, then I can guarantee that those are going to be extended out, and then your monetary benefits are down the road on those cars. But the ones that are already working, they're all in different mileage, they're all in different shape. You know, I'm sure that once we start it, you know, Drew brought the point last week when we met with him that North Bend is putting money into the fund to replace cars, and those cars are still on track for a 5-year replacement. And that's going to be additional to, you know, was it the 2nd year or the 3rd year, they're going to have to replace cars plus buy the 2 new cars. So it's not just a flat number. You know, it's one of those things that's kind of a moving target for us. Did that answer your question? I mean, I'm sure some of them will be able to extend out, but there are some that are old.
Nervous.
So the other thing is you need to make sure that North Bend has their own take-home cars, Snoqualmie has their own take-home cars, and we're not going to be sharing. And so we need to make sure that, I don't know how many from North Bend would get the cars, but there needs to be enough carpool
Mhm.
for the rest of the officers that don't have take-home cars,
Yes,
instead of borrowing from us, but
yes.
and vice versa. So
Mhm.
Makes sense.
And I know I've spoke to Officer Smith about this, about, you know, there's a couple of officers that live within 1 mile to 2 miles of the police station. I know one of them probably not going to want their car. One of them might. And at the 2-year mark, maybe it's something that we put into where Officer Smith's car, who's driving to Maple Valley or Enumclaw every day, has higher mileage than the one that's only 2 miles away from the station. And then we switch to keep the mileage, you know, kind of equal and level throughout that life of those cars. So there's so many different things, aspects of things that we have to look at, but possibilities in this.
Makes sense.
Does Officer Smith want one? I got the sense that he didn't actually want one.
Yeah, he's doing this off the kindness of his heart. So yeah.
Anything further?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Captain.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll just add a couple additional things. So the contract with North Bend is scheduled to finish or wrap up December 31st, 2024. And I believe we need to submit a letter to North Bend before the end of this year, which I think we've already accomplished, right, for the most part, to have that kind of negotiation process take place. So that is something that we can kind of look forward to as part of the overall kind of negotiation process. Is we will have to be potentially renegotiating this contract depending on what North Bend wants to do and what Snoqualmie wants to do moving forward. And so, like I said, the contract is scheduled to end by the end of 2024. In terms of the police take-home car program itself, as Captain Brian said, in essence, we would be requesting from North Bend to purchase 1 vehicle in 2023 and 1 vehicle in 2024. As a part of that overall package that we submitted to their budget, which is interesting. I usually have the department director submit things to me, but here I am submitting things to the finance director over there. As a part of that overall package, what we submitted included taking the Mechanic 2, which is a component to this overall program, and shifting that into 2024. So we want to actually hire someone from 2023 at that stage, which helps to reduce the administrative cost overall for that 2023 period. But
Sorry, Drew,
yes.
just to clarify, you're saying not to include the mechanic until 2024. Is that for that
2024.
part-time for us, or is that just for
That's
North Bend?
for us, but we would also be charging, right, North Bend for a portion of the mechanic's time as well. So when you shift that into 2024, their cost share would then come in that year.
Okay,
Right,
but
at
we
the
would
time that
be
we hire.
bringing someone on in 2023?
No, the proposal
the
would
entire thing
include
is
bringing
2024.
someone in for 2024. Ideally, you're trying to time when you actually hire the mechanic up with when you have your vehicles in place. And so our initial proposal to North Bend was for them to fully purchase 6 vehicles for 2023, which of course would require the Mechanic 2 to be in place by that time when we get those things going. But if we're only going to purchase one from or have Snoqualmie purchase one, have North Bend purchase one, then we might be able to delay that mechanic a little bit, basically until 2024, when we have some additional vehicles that we may have to do some work on. So I just want to make sure that that was clear as part of the proposal that we submitted. The document that you have as a part of your agenda bill does not include the updated cost to North Bend that we were proposing. And I just want to reiterate what the mayor said. In essence, this is kind of figuring or trying to figure out the two different speeds we want to go. So the question is, does council actually want to continue with this police car take-home program? We'll eventually need a vote, right? Regarding if council wants to move forward with this, but we're also going to need a vote from North Bend. And so there's a bit of a chicken or egg thing that's going on a little bit here. Who goes first, right? For the most part, to provide that commitment overall. But I think we're seeking commitment from council. At the same time, we're seeking commitment from the North Bend City Council too. And we'll kind of pursue that as we proceed here. So hopefully that's some more information. I don't know if I just rambled off a bunch of things, but there you go.
I guess I have a question. Is there any estimated timeline for when we'll hear back from them? Would it be before we revisit the budget? I'm assuming probably not on Monday.
I'll check with Mayor McFarland, but I'm not sure when they're voting on their budget
Okay,
deliberations, so we'll find out.
oh, thank you. Councilmember Watton.
Well, since it's contingent on North Bend also approving it, we could approve our portion of it, subject to North Bend approving their fair share of the program.
You could also potentially maybe go two different speeds. So if North Bend says no, maybe Snoqualmie wants to continue with the police take car program just for its set of officers and sergeants, for example, and
I think
proceed
that's
that
gonna be
direction.
really hard to do
It will be. Yes, it will.
because our officers cover both cities
Hmm.
on their shifts.
Yeah, and how would that work with the MOU?
Unless we just park the car at the city limits.
We'll have a turn off
I don't know.
on that. Okay,
It doesn't sound very
point well
fair.
taken.
Doesn't sound fair to our police. So that might be
Okay.
problematic. Okay. Are there any other questions about the budget, or is there anything else that you wanted to provide an update on?
Nothing for me.
Councilmembers Watton or Benson?
Fire tanker engine. Do we have newer numbers? Pumper,
No.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Tanker is an aircraft.
Oh, that's, okay, sorry.
Ooh, are we getting one of those?
Oh my
Man,
gosh, I need a diagram.
Snoqualmie
All
Fire
right.
Airport, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, the numbers I gave you. in the last
Really
meeting
cool,
is
bro.
still waiting for the closer.
Okay,
They're still- once we get officially-
Okay,
sounds good.
thank you.
We'll get the fire chief some aviators for that one.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so I think now we would be moving on to the discussion items. Chief Carrera.
I just want to say, we'll give these guys a ride home if they need one. Fire's here to serve. Feeling some stairs in my back right now. The comprehensive emergency management plan, I just want to give you an update. That document sits in about a 4-inch binder, double-sided printed. It's about probably 800 to 1,000 pages. I plan on sending you that in pieces. Because it needs to be reviewed and approved by council. So it'll start with the basic plan, then I'll send you some of the emergency support functions over the next couple weeks. And it's really a planning tool. It's really a guiding document. I would certainly advocate that you read every page, but I think you're going to find that's pretty hard to do. We're doing it. It needs to be reviewed and updated every 5 years. This is our 5-year review. It needs to go to the state for final approval after it's adopted by the council, which we hope to do later this year. So we can also ask for additional time from the state if need be. So if you're feeling that there's too much pressure and there's too much to go over it, we can certainly stretch that out a little bit further. Okay, I just wanted to give you guys an update on that so that in case you saw those emails coming from me, that's what it was about.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And Chief Carrera, will you provide an update on the
Yeah, I'm
fire
just
as
gonna
well?
take the first one.
Oh,
He's gonna
okay.
talk about the fire that's closest to the city, and then I just wanted to talk about wildland fire, some tools that are available to the community. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to go over some of what everybody's been obviously seeing the last couple of days. So the Katrine fire, it's located just out the North Fork Road. It's probably about 13 miles, northeast. We've all seen the glow of North Bend, Snoqualmie area. It actually started on September 2nd, and it was a relatively small fire, about 4 acres. It was being managed by DNR, because it kind of straddles right in private timberland and the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. It's kind of in the same area. So it was being handled by DNR. Then what really got it in everybody's attention is over the weekend, it grew in size, and that was basically due to the low humidity that was at the time and the warm eastern winds that we had. And just as a reminder, when we talk about low humidity, that is the moisture in the air. So when you have humidity is the moisture in the air. So when we talk about having low humidity, that means there's less moisture in the air and the fuels dry out quicker, which causes, you know, relatively speaking, more fire area, more chance of fire growing. So that's coupled with the high temperatures and the wind that we had over the weekend is what really caused it to blow up. Over the weekend, they were saying that they thought it was around 2,200 acres, but they actually pared it down today. They actually had some aircraft up in the air and they were able to do some better heat mapping and figure out how big it was. And the last one I saw just an hour or so ago was that they think it's around 1,300 acres. It's not threatening any structures. It's not threatening any property. It's burning in all just forested lands. They've been hitting it with aircraft. So there've been aircraft around today, and they also, you might have seen on Facebook that they have ground crews going in to try and get around the fire. So, you know, at this time it was, you know, although it is rather visible just because of the conditions and how it blew up, it wasn't threatening the city. It was fairly slow moving and it was going away from the city at this time. They also have a type 2 emergency management team that started on the fire today. And that's why we saw, like on Facebook, a lot more of the resources coming. So they're coming to actually manage the fire. But again, right now it's being handled by DNR resources. It's not a state mobilization fire where they're asking for help from other fire departments, ones that we participated in before, where we might send an engine. It's not to that level. It's all just being handled with DNR resources, just because that's the area that it's located in. So that's kind of a snapshot of what's going on with that current fire. Any questions on that piece of it?
Councilmember Benson.
Do we just get lucky with the wind, or is there?
Wind as in causing it to blow up or not causing it to come toward us?
Yeah.
Yeah, causing not, I mean, here Chief will probably talk about, you know, the fires on the western side have been, you know, there's more chance of it coming recently where it's been growing, but the area that it's in, it's fairly, you know, it's a pretty dense area, but it is still a fairly wet area. So even though that we did have the winds, the chances of if the wind shifted and came back this way, it would take quite a bit for it to come this direction into the city.
Any further questions? Thank
So
you.
a couple of tools that are available for you guys, if you're curious about this stuff. There's two main websites that we use. This is the Western Fire Chiefs Association. This is their brand new fire map. I sit on the board for the Western Fire Chiefs. And this is a new product they're pushing out. And it's actually runs on a mobile platform. It's actually one of the few and only ones that actually run on mobile platform. And it's just starting to emerge with additional information. They populate this through the NWCG, which is the wildfire fighting groups, their database system, and it automatically populates over here. The Katrine fire, as you can see here, what this blue line is here, and when I zoom in, you can see this is actually aircraft and their lines that they were taking and where they were going to get their water, and then where they were flying over and dropping it over here on this corner of the incident. This was one of their new updates to it. You can also select this here, and it provides information about the size, how much of it's contained, how much it has grown in the past 24 hours, and then how many days it's actually been active. So as Mike said, this fire, we responded to this back on September 2nd, and it was contained. And a lot of times that's pretty standard for Forest Service events. They'll just leave them unmitigated or let them slowly creep and burn. Like Mike said, the challenge was the wind direction changed and caused this with the low fuels and the red flag day and those hotter winds coming across the mountains. It caused this fire to kind of take off and grow pretty quickly. When you look regionally, these are other incidents that are going on. This is Bolt Creek fire up here. This one's 41% contained, over 14,000 acres. And then Murphy Lake is burning closer on the other side of the pass. This one's 0% contained and only 220 acres. It's a U.S. Forest Service event. This map actually covers the entire western states. You can actually look at any fire on all these these are different aircrafts that are being used to fight the different events. This was a recent addition, as I mentioned. And you can even look to see what's going on down in California. and about how busy they are. So there's a lot of good information that can be provided here. Another website, I'm going to stop sharing here just so I can switch it, is INSEWeb. This information on INSEWeb is provided through similar channels as the other website is as well. But it has generally will have a lot more detailed information. As an example, this is the Bold Creek fire. There's not a lot of information. This here is the Katrine fire over here, but this is Bold Creek. You can select it. You can go to the incident. And this provides all of the up-to-date information, number of units that are on it, who's managing the event. You can also go down here to look at the announcements that are occurring for the event, any news, closures, photographs of the event. They'll show different pictures of it. So it gives you a real good sense of available information. And I'll email this to you as a resource if you're curious or wondering about an event that's going on in the region. As Mike said, the Katrine fire is, I want to say 11.9 or 12 miles outside of the city. That's a long way away for a wildland fire unless we were to get a southerly wind where it would blow this whole thing up. And even then, it would likely not even impact the city potentially. But these are a couple of resources that are available to the community and to you all if you're looking for that. We did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago about planning for next year's wildland fire season, and we're putting together a work plan on that. I've got some documents over there I can certainly share. The reality is a lot of these incidents are going to go away when it starts raining, hopefully later this week. So sometimes that's just the way wildland is managed. They go out when it starts raining or snowing in the higher elevations, and that's what happens. So this is unprecedented. Unfortunately, this is probably going to be the new normal that we're going to be dealing with over here. This year seems unprecedented just because, as you would imagine, we're not used to having these hot temperatures, 88 degrees or 85 degrees in October. Normally the monsoon season has started and the wind's blowing this time of year. So, but as the climate reportedly changes, then we're going to have to continue to deal with these things. And we are preparing for that. We are developing our work plan. We do have the wildfire strategy that the mayor is actually a signatory on that King County adopted. Along with the executive, we're also putting together our work plan. We're working with both Phil, our urban forester, and the building department. Building department may be bringing forward wildland urban interface codes for the council to consider next year. We're also having a conversation about developing a community or hiring a firm to do a community wildfire protection plan. They did one in Lake Alice a few years ago. This one's from the foothills down in Green River area, down by Needhamclaw. These create basically a roadmap for us to implement new and innovative programs to try to protect the community. And we're even talking about at the state level, potentially doing things that California has been doing with this regarding maybe requiring homes and interurban interfaces to have to be inspected by the fire department to make sure they have defensible spaces, to make sure they're using the right vegetation to protect these homes that are in these areas. Because this is, like I said, likely going to be the new normal. We had that conversation last week with the State Chiefs Association. So a lot of this stuff is in flux. You're going to see us coming forward with a work plan to the mayor so that we can start implementing these programs. And we'll obviously be bringing programs and potentially plans forward for the council to consider adopting in the future. But I can take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
All right. There being no further business, I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
As long as we do it together, I will second.
All right. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.